Okay. But I wanted to open it up and spend a few minutes on there was a video Zoom meeting regarding the PFAS with chemicals in Rockland County's water, and I want to thank Bill and Kelsey and Ray. I know you're familiar with this, but just address a couple issues since it is kind of hot off the press. I had a couple questions. And Nicole, I thought this might be really interesting too, that if possible, since this is being recorded, it might be an avenue for people that if they had some questions, this might be an area that they could be directed to try and listen into this chat that we're going to have. And just real quick, Chelsea and Bill, again, thanks. I had just a couple questions after the Zoom meeting. One that I had is, seemed like it was being found in the groundwater. So I was wondering if that's true, and is Lake DeForest good, I guess, in a sense, has it been found in Lake DeForest, and if so, at what quantities?
Sure. So, hey, Matt, thanks for having us. Thank you, Nicole, and I'm pleased to be here. Yeah, so just for the folks on the call who may not know the background of this, they may not have been on the Zoom that was held a couple of weeks ago, a public forum on PFOA and PFAS. And really the headline to this from our standpoint, and we've been communicating very closely with our customers since November on this through email, direct mail, all the channels that we have to reach with them. So the customers are aware of it. But there has been no change to the concentration of these substances in the water. What has changed is this testing standard. So just to give you a brief overview, these substances, PFOA and PFAS, are found in firefighting foam and a whole host of household and consumer products. And I'll give you just a list a few: nonstick cookware, fast food packaging, stain-resistant products, photography chemicals. It goes on shampoo, pesticides, and for a long time, we were operating under the EPA's national health advisory level of 70 parts per trillion. That's T as in trillion. And just so you know, in most parts of Europe, their standard is 300 parts per trillion. In September, New York implemented their own standard at 10 parts per trillion. Which is substantially lower than the national standard. And again, we have obviously a 6 billion gallon water reservoir and 60 production wells, many sources of water. And on only a handful of our wells did we slightly go over the 10 parts per trillion. And in all of the state language, the EPA language, consuming drinking water that is at or somewhat above the MCL level does not pose a health risk. So that's what's been the most important message to our customers. And for Nicole's reference, we put together a very, very comprehensive website that talks about every element of this issue. It's nysuezwq.com, and sort of the translation at New York SuezWaterQuality.com, but it's nysuezwq.com. And that has, like I said, a very complete look at this issue that we've shared with our customers. So, for me, I guess to answer your question, so I hope that provided some background. But to answer your question, no, we have not exceeded the new standard of 10 at Lake DeForest.
Bill, thanks very much. I should have had you go first to begin with. So I think that's great news that it's a little less concentrated than Lake DeForest. And I'm going to assume too that with all the wells that you operate and the water coming from the reservoir, that this all somehow gets mixed within the infrastructure? So it's not like, even if you had a a well that may be above the standards that New York State has imposed, by the time it gets mixed with other water sources, it's got to even be less than that. I would assume that anyway. Is that
Right.
correct?
Right, and an important that's correct. And it's an important factor that I didn't mention in my overview was that we've now been awarded a deferral by the state. They all knew all along that you just can't remedy these numbers overnight. And in fact, it's going to cost millions of dollars and take some time to get the entire system under the 10 parts per trillion level. So we have been awarded a deferral that gives us time to reach the new standard. And we knew, we had, I mean, let's be honest, knowing this business, the state knew that in announcing the lowest level in the nation, that all the water providers in the state would need some time to reach it. So, I mean, that's another piece of good news. But I think I answered your question. Unlike other parts of the country where PFOA and PFAS have become have raised the awareness of it, there's large factories or other pretty obvious sources of these substances near water supplies. In our case, we don't have that. It's just through a wide variety. We can't, through all the studying that we've done, we can't identify the source. It finds its way into the water supply through all the different ways that I listed before. So I think I answered your question, Matt.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
Sure.
Yeah.
This is Patricia. Hi, Bill.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Happy New Year, belatedly. But yeah, I just wanted to say it's I was on the conference call that was organized by Rockland Water Coalition, Sierra Club. It was sort of a joint effort, I think. And with Harriet, we had recently also had a conference call with Dan Miller and Sam Ruley, and we were a little surprised that we didn't see the health department or DEC or you represented at the table. And I think Sam or Dan mentioned that they were not invited, and Harriet had thought that there was a missing perspective a little bit. And so I did ask this question about I asked Dan and Sam this question about if they had to think about something that maybe sort of raised a red flag or was maybe not completely accurate in the presentation, which otherwise, everybody thought was really well done, excellent work with scientists and, scientific perspective and in-depth explanation of the issues with PFAS chemicals. They mentioned that issue with the sensitivity of testing and mentioned that the commercial labs that are the only ones that are that would be certified by the state to use for this kind of testing was it was the sensitivity was only 20 parts per million, and it was just not sensitive enough at the time when the testing started, when things were starting to be watched by EPA, and when Suez actually did the first round of testing some years back, and I think that was some of the testing that Dan Shapley was referring to, from Riverkeeper was referring to. And, they were wondering why it was not, more sensitive, or, they didn't test for something closer to the MCL limit that's established now. But he was explaining this was just not a thing yet. The sensitivity for these tests, they were not equipped for it. It was just not being done yet, and they couldn't do it. And now the commercial labs are capable of going to 2 parts per trillion. However, he also mentioned that the testing methods are they sort of have a margin of error that can be, up to like 8 parts per trillion. It's just the amounts that we're talking about are so minute, and the tests have to be so specialized and so sensitive that this kind of testing doesn't even lend itself to maybe citizens projects or things like that, because because these chemicals are so omnipresent that the minute amount of contamination can happen from just about anything. And so it was just interesting to get this additional sort of correction and perspective. And he mentioned that you guys got the extension. Obviously, it's a good thing. He also mentioned that the other larger providers in Rockland County, Nyack and I think Suffern, did not actually do the earlier round of testing, which is why they ended up not getting the deferral that you mentioned. So they may get a violation. Once the standard is being enforced, they may get a violation until they come into compliance. And so people may receive a letter. And so, I wonder if people will be again getting concerned about this and having questions. But I think Harriet was thinking about whether it would be useful to also bring to the table, maybe do a follow-up sort of meeting where, this in-depth explanation of sort of the regulatory process and the perspective of DEC and DOH and Suez was brought to the table as well, because I had some questions to DEC, such as, if there's any testing for specific sources in Rockland being done. And as you mentioned, there has been some testing apparently done by DEC around sites that were prioritized according to some kind of priority list they obviously have, looking at places where there could be higher concentrations, and they have not really found any significant single source of contamination or single industry that would be concentrating some kind of large amount somewhere that could be identified as the polluter in that sense.
Yeah, so those are all good points. Thank you. I just want to add a couple of things. Yes, we've worked very closely with the county on this for now almost 2 years. And in fact, all of that initial research and testing allowed us, to your good point, to earn the extension and the deferral. Yes, we were not invited to the forum. And again, another good point by you. These to test at these levels, PFOA and PFAS couldn't even be detected as recently as a couple of years ago in most standard testing. So that's another reason why this has become now what has a little more urgency around the country and the world. So yeah, thanks for your additions there.
Sure thing. Nice to see you again.
Okay.
Yeah, so to follow up, Patricia, if Harriet would like to reach out to myself or Nicole, if she would like any help from our organization, Rockland Water Quality Committee, then have you or Harriet certainly reach out at any time. Anything we can do, that's actually one of our main goals of this committee, is to share information. So, Bill, I did go to the website, and it is a great website. I'd encourage everybody to go there. Did answer a couple of questions, and I think Patricia, you just answered my last question too, with the sense of who can test for this. We've got a couple wells on the golf course, but it sounds like I'm not even going to begin to try and get it tested, because it seems like that's an extremely difficult test to perform. Correct?
So DOH Sam was saying that he's going to come up with with a list of possible labs that might be able to help with the testing. He was saying that the testing might be a little expensive, because one of our questions was about private well owners. But he promised, as a follow-up to our conference call with DOH, to provide some testing labs that would be able to do this. So I'm gonna try to follow up with that. And I can send you a list of additional questions that essentially sparked this conversation with DOH to talk a little more closely and ask why it is that, there hasn't been, they're still, just to be honest, they're still trying to sort of regroup, even as they're dealing with the COVID emergency. They're working really hard, and they're trying to put together some kind of policy and sort of unified and sensical sort of answer to people and guidance on, what to know about these chemicals, what to look for, or whether a testing would be advised under certain circumstances, et cetera. I had asked questions such as, should people maybe do a blood test if they're concerned, or if the test for their well would be too expensive and they think they have a reason to believe that there would be high concentrations. And there were lots of other questions that we had that they had really interesting and good answers to, and clarifications that were really appreciated. So I thank you so much, Matt, for saying we could coordinate and get some help and team up with you guys on the effort for Harriet to bring the government actors and maybe the water company, if they were willing to, come to the table and give these clarifications and their perspective and, their plans for what they're doing. We had questions about the reasons for choosing the specific method of treatment, the carbon filtration, and there were some really good answers and points from Dan Miller that he made about sort of a broader spectrum of treatment that it can achieve, and it's just it can be beneficial that way. So in any case, I will definitely tell Harriet about what you said about working together, teaming up if we could. And I hope, if we manage to sort of work with DOH and put something together, I hope that we could reach out to Bill and ask if they'd be willing to hop on and be on a panel as well and give their perspective and, show their website. DOH told us about the website that there would be some of the tests and things would be very transparently shown on the website. This is all the whole process, the review process, the compliance process is sort of going to be showing its progress reports and all of that on this. I'm assuming this same website. And so this is, I think, valuable information for people to know. This is where you can go. There's no black hole. This is happening. This is, being shown. You can take a look and ask questions. So I really like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in terms of transparency, we've communicated with our customers pretty intensively, and again, work very closely with the health department in Rockland. And sure, we would consider participating. Just and you can contact me, Patricia.
Oh, great, thank you. I have a question for you, Bill. I was asking DOH that as well. What kind of questions did you get a lot from your customers? Did you get a lot of sort of specific recurring questions, frequently asked questions that you have?
There's great value in being proactive and defining the issue before someone else does. That's what we do for a living in corporate communications. And we were surprised on the low number of questions, but it really comes down to, is the water safe to drink? That was the most common question. Yeah,
that's what Dan was saying, that they had dealt with some other similar changes in rules or emergencies, and they had a lot more questions. He thought maybe people are preoccupied with other emergencies at the moment, and so it's possible that it was just not sort of a priority on their mind. But there, I was a little concerned that the number of questions was not matching the amount of people that hopped on the call that was organized by Sierra Club and our Rockland Water Coalition. They were saying they had 450 people on the call, and so I'm just trying to figure out where this gap is. But in any case, we started out with the frequently asked questions that were prepared by Dan Miller, probably in cooperation with you. And then we had some, expanded questions that we asked as well, in addition to that, and sort of maybe more in depth, and maybe even following, some of the discussion that was that happened at that panel, at that meeting. and even, including some of those clarifications about the testing sensitivity and the history of how the situation developed.
Yeah, those are all good points. I don't have much to add to it. I don't know if Chelsea my colleague had anything to add.
No, I was just going to say, in this topic in particular, I had a casual conversation with our Vice President of Water Quality, and her mention to me was, the sensitivity of how we're looking at PFAS in the water now, and the levels that we're looking for it at. You could find it in a groundwater situation or whatever water source it is if there's a car fire on Route 87. If there's a small house fire and the firefighters go out there, she said those really small incidents can lead to accumulation, unfortunately. So as Bill said, it's tough to detect one single source, and really it's just a history of events.
Yeah, and I just wanted to clarify something, Patrice. I don't have a direct number of call. We have 300,000 customers in Rockland alone, and we have 12 full-time people on the customer service area, and we field somewhere between 1,000 and 1,800 calls a week, and most of them are related to their bill. But I don't have I can't say for sure that we had less than 450 calls. And if you wanted, I could find out how many calls we did. But certainly
it was just for my own interest, because I asked that question to the health department, and their sense was that it was not as overwhelming as they thought it would have been, maybe under different circumstances.
That's a fair characterization. That's how I characterized it earlier. It was less than what we expected.
Sure. Yeah. Great. Thank you.
And Matt and Bill, before we move on, I think Hannah has a question for Bill as well.
Thanks, Nicole. Yeah, I have a quick question about the GAC filters that are going to be used. I heard at that panel discussion that these filters are temporary because they have to be replaced, and there's disposal and other issues. So I was wondering if there's like a long-term plan, because we don't know the source of it, so it's not like it can be remediated that way.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that's out of my lane. I'll get you an answer. That's something that one of my engineering colleagues would know the answer to that.
Thanks.
Do you mind if I just contribute one more thought? So I'm curious in terms of the questions that were generated when you reached out to all your customers. I'm not on Suez Water because I live in Nyack, but I will say that I wasn't aware of this issue because I don't pay for my water. My landlord does. And so I'm curious if some situations like that, if you have a lot of renters who aren't paying for the water, if it's like a landlord management company, I guess would you even know if the landlord let their tenants know? Because I didn't know about this. It was brought to my attention while I was at work, and that's how I found out about it.
Right, that's a good question. And the responsibility is to the landlord, that's our customer. And from what we understand, most landlords do an adequate job of notifying their, spreading this news onto their tenants. We did communicate this issue through other channels other than direct customer communications. For example, we did a news release that went to the Journal News. The Journal News wrote a front page story on it. We posted on our Facebook page, on our Twitter page. So there is a possibility that customers who do not receive a bill would learn about it that way.
Cool. That's good to know. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions or comments for Bill or Chelsea?
You can also throw questions at Ray, I heard.
Oh, it's New Jersey.
I'm just kidding.
Ray's a superstar at Suez.
Well, in lieu of, and being cognizant
Bill
of
must
time,
want something.
we've got a couple minutes here, and Nicole, not hearing any other comments regarding the PFAS. Did you want to say anything about your study?
Yes, thanks, Matt. So I just wanted to let everyone know that most likely on February 4th at 6 p.m., there will be the second kickoff meeting to the New York State Flood Study Initiative, which means that community members, instead of government officials, will be invited to participate in a Zoom call with Malone and McBroom. The project lead there is Mark Carabetta, and he will be discussing the Minnesyango Creek, Spark Hill Creek, Mawa River, and I believe the Hackensack River are the 4 key waterways that will be investigated. And we've already sent out information to about 40 stakeholders that I'm aware of, including some folks from the Spark Hill Creek Watershed Alliance and Minnesyango Creek Watershed Alliance, as well as the Ramapo River Watershed, even though the Ramapo wasn't funded for this exact round. However, there's still some links there with the other watersheds I mentioned. So after going through a doodle poll with them to help get some community engagement, we decided most likely on February 4th at 6 p.m. Mark will send out an official meeting invitation and I will forward it out to people as well. And we decided for that time to allow for more people to attend. And I'll see if that could be recorded and uploaded to our website. And then moving forward from there, the team at Malone and McBroom will actually do on the ground analysis, and they're meeting at Minnesyango Creek, actually at Garner Holding Company pretty soon to do some boots on the ground investigations. And they'll do that for all the other waterways as well. And then they'll create a flood plan for each watershed, which includes recommendations on how to improve and mitigate flooding risk. And they will have another meeting once that plan is done to present that to the public and gain feedback.
Nicole, is this any way related to the never
The bi-state water.
Bi-state water flood coalition or committee?
I mean, some of the waterways do impact New Jersey. So I think in a way it does. However, when it's presented to me from DEC and from the engineering firm, they don't make mention of it that way. So I see overlaps, but it's not explicitly saying like this relates to the bi-state water coalition that never officially formed. So it could be a progress.
I'm actually wondering, I know that Tom Snow, was it from DEC? He was very eager to see progress through the bi-state commission and was asking about it and was wondering about it, and actually wondered if we could include some of the flooding scope in our Ramapo Mawa watershed study that we're going to be doing, the task force. I mean, and so I think it may be related to some frustration with the bi-state commission not going forward. But my question is, what happened with the $100,000 that they were allocated, that the group received to do their work?
I would assume that's just through New York, because I'm an appointed by a state senator in New Jersey to this bi-state commission, and we never had the opportunity to meet with the New York members because New York never appointed their representatives.
That's what I heard. That was my impression, that New York side never finished appointing the members. And I just know that in the legislation that created the bi-state commission, they were supposed to have an allocation of a $100,000 fund to do some of their initial work. And I just wonder if it sort of disappeared in the budget because it was not used, or if it if it's sitting somewhere and if it could be leveraged. I think that could be a good question for a member of the group to try and ask or get at, or alternatively, we could try to ask some of the leaders that were, initially maybe Ken Zabrowski's office might know. I think he was in charge of appointing some of the New York side, and we could, try to find out if they could actually become a resource for this project. I wonder.
Certainly a question to ask during the meeting.
All right, let's see if we can generate something to follow up on that. With that, we are a little over our allotted time. And unless somebody has something pressing to add to this, I would.
Oh, Matt, before you close, can we just give Chelsea the floor to just make one quick update?
Yeah.
Thank you. I would just say, by the way, in a past life, I was a lake management intern who studied Eurasian milfoil using biotreatment in the form of weevils, which entailed catching, swimming, breeding, and then deploying weevils. So it was very interesting to see James speak and think about my own fun historic experience. It's been a decade. So maybe that treatment is outdated now because he didn't talk about any bug treatment, but fun fact about me before I joined SUEZ. And just as Nicole alluded to, a general update is that our conservation program, because of its success in Rockland, has been deployed in Westchester and Putnam County as well. So almost every New York customer is now involved in the program, except for one small group because of the way our rate case was settled. And everyone basically, as of February 1st, will be billed under a conservation rate design too. So that was started here in Rockland and has rolled out to Westchester. And we've been proactively communicating with our customers how to understand what inclining block rates are. The more you use, the higher you pay per unit of water. Translating that into normal language for people to understand, and trying to reach them before they turn on their sprinklers for the summer. Outdoor water use is a pressing issue for us, not only from a conservation perspective, but avoiding runoff and protecting the water quality in Westchester. So for me, I see a lot of synergies there and with that. And that's pretty much my most major update. So thanks to Rockland, again, the program was so successful here that we're rolling it out over there. And I look forward to actually going there in person one day. It's very strange to do like Zoom intros to conservation. I'm so used to being boots on the ground, but I know we'll get back there someday. So looking forward to that time.
That's awesome. That's pretty good.
Thank you.
You're not old enough to have a past life, though.
Well, I did get some interesting comments from men in the HOA when I was doing this job, and they asked, like, can you carry that cement brick? Like, are you cut out for this? And I was like, dude, I'm a modern woman. We live many lives, us modern women. Thank you.
Can I have just one quick little update as well?
Sure.
Oh, Chelsea, that was awesome, by the way. Carry that brick for all of us. I just wanted to mention as a quick update, whoever has not heard, it's just sort of a task force, I guess, administrative matter. My position was moved over to Department of Health from planning. There isn't much change because it's just, another task force member. It's really just sort of a pro forma type of thing. But I'm still finding out if my phone number will change or not. So the best way to reach me really is on my cell phone and through email. And my cell phone is 914-620-5042. I'll try to include it on my emails just before everything gets transferred and I know the lay of the land again. And the other update is I will be going on maternity leave probably in the beginning of March, if not earlier, as I am 8 months pregnant currently.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Great, good stuff. I'm glad to see things are, even in this pandemic era, that things are moving along, and it's hard to get things done sometimes. I can understand that for sure. It's certainly trying times, so kudos to everybody there. making things move forward and making progress. So, would anybody else have anything else to add?
I gotta go. I got another meeting.
That's
Thanks,
the
Ray.
Suez way.
I think that we can get a motion to adjourn if I can attain that.
So moved.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks again. Next meeting is March 16th. Thanks for everything, Nicole. Thanks for putting this on and getting this all done. Thanks again to James. I believe he signed off, but thanks for everybody. Welcome aboard, Hannah, and we'll see everybody again in March.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.